Welcome to Content with Character, the weekly podcast that'll give you the momentum you need to create content with more ease, clarity, and laughter. I'm your host, content copywriter Emily Aborn, and I'm all about unconventional marketing approaches. I believe in your big ideas, and I'm excited to help you share them in a way that's distinctly you. Hi, welcome back. I'm so glad you're here. Today, I'm sharing a little bit of behind the scenes and a personal story. I'm a little nervous, to be honest with you, but I'm sharing a personal story that taught me a valuable lesson about business and decision making and some of the experiences that maybe our clients are going through as well when they're trying to determine who to hire, when, and how, and what we go through when we're trying to determine who to hire, when, and how. I mentioned last week the importance of sharing stories in your content, and some from your everyday life and some from your business. So I am practicing what I teach in this episode. Okay. Before we head in, if you don't know me because you're new here or you always fast forward my introduction, today you're going to learn more about me than you probably ever wanted to. But on a professional level, I am a writer, a podcaster, as you can hear by the sound of my voice, and I help people to write website copy, blogs, and a lot of the marketing materials that help to bring their brand message to life, their voice of their business to life. And I also help people sometimes by coming alongside them and giving them like one-to-one support with their marketing and content needs. And if you're ever listening to this show and you're like, hey, this girl is kind of cool, I want to connect with her, all the links I mentioned are and will almost always be in the show notes. So that is me professionally, but now for a little bit more of the personal stuff. I am 38 years old, and I'm kind of right now counting down to age 40. So what that looks like for me right now is a little bit of experimenting, sometimes in big ways, sometimes in small ways, and doing a lot of the things that I've always wanted to do, but I've never actually done. So for today's example, one of which is a tattoo. I am, like I said, 38 years old. I've always wanted one, and I don't really know why I've never gotten one. I think I always saw myself as like maybe the kind of person, I'm using big time air quotes here, like the kind of person who would not get one. And then I realized like, hey, I can actually do anything that I want to do and still be any kind of person that I want to be. So it's all good. There are like 7 sides to every coin, and you're never something just because you did one thing, right? It's never just this or that. So I decided to go for it. And of course, after I made my decision, like, yes, this is what I want, I had to think about what felt important to me to do. This was my first, obviously. So I really wanted to make sure that whatever I was putting on my body permanently would be a good expression of me and myself through art. Okay. So first, I went into the dreaming and planning phase. Like once I decided that this is what I wanted to do, I went to Reddit actually, and I just asked for local recommendations. Now, I didn't ask friends in this instance because, quite frankly, I didn't really want anyone to know what I was doing until I had like really gone that next step. I don't like a lot of people's opinions and other people's chatter. I didn't really want anybody swaying me one way or the other when I'm trying to make up my mind about certain things. I just want recommendations and facts and from non-biased parties. So at the same time that I went to Reddit and I got these recommendations for local folks, I also at the same time went to Pinterest, and I was starting to kind of just compile my own ideas and my own inspiration of what I liked and what I didn't like. And by the way, if you want to see what I chose and why, you can read my Substack article that I wrote about it. There's a link in the show notes to that. I use Substack strictly for personal and fun, and so this is like no business lessons. It's just the actual describing of the experience, and I do show pictures. So anyway, I'm on Pinterest. I'm compiling my ideas and inspiration of what I like and what I don't like, and then I went to check out Reddit. Like the recommendations started pouring in. And I realized in looking at everybody's recommendations that there were a ton. And they all kind of had like different ways to go about getting in touch with them and to even look at their work in general. So sometimes I would go to a website. Sometimes it would take me to Instagram. Sometimes you would have to actually like email or text, and there was no place you could really find them online. Everybody had different ways where you could like preview their work, get in touch with them. And then there were also options within options depending on the studio. So when I started seeing that, okay, this recommendation list is really, really long, and it's like a little bit confusing for me to manage all of these moving parts and pieces mentally, I started putting together a spreadsheet, a tattoo spreadsheet. On my spreadsheet, I included website links and social media, if it was applicable, names of each artist that I liked, and sometimes I would even put little notes about like a little bit about their style. And then I also added like whether or not I had contacted them and how. Because some of them, like I said, were email, some were WhatsApp, some were Instagram, some were the contact form on their website. There were lots, some are text. There were lots and lots of different ways to contact people. So from there, that was like the first step, and it was overwhelming. Let me just tell you, I did not realize how many options were out there and kind of what all of the possibility therein is. So from there, it actually took kind of a lot of patience because some people got back to you right away. But it wasn't always like exactly like very informative. It was just kind of like opening up the channels of conversation. And then a lot of people took a really long time to get back to you. And they even would state that on different places. Like sometimes they would say, it takes me a couple weeks to catch up on my emails, but I will get back to everybody who submits something. Some people even said I respond to all emails on Tuesdays. So that was awesome. But basically, I had to be really, really patient. And when somebody did get back to me like instantly, and they were like, here's how to book, it usually, after like further investigation, it just honestly wasn't always exactly what I was looking for. Like sometimes it had to do with the quality. Sometimes it just was like, I don't think this is it. So like the style maybe. So I like had to go really slow, which is hard for me because when I make my decision to do something, I kind of just want to get it done. I just want to do it. I want to put the date on my calendar and do it. So I also simultaneously, in addition to like kind of having a hard time with patience, I also do struggle with decision making. And what I don't like is being in limbo of making a decision. I don't like the angst of like not having chosen something. So I was kind of just like working down this giant list, and finally, after maybe I'd say it was like a week and a half probably, I had finally narrowed that list down to my top 5 choices. And each of those 5 I had contacted in some way. Some of them I still had not heard back from, and that was a little frustrating, but they were still on my top 5 list, okay? But I think that was actually a lot of the hard part is like you had to wait to hear back from, like I kind of wanted to hear back from all of them, right? So that I could know the nuances. And, I still hadn't made up my mind on who out of these 5, like I most wanted. So it was a little bit of like honestly, it like literally kept me up at night for like 3 nights. So after kind of that whole 5, I whittled the list down further because people did start getting back to me, and it was due to like, some of the reasons I whittled it down was like location maybe wasn't working for me and the person I was going with. The price wasn't working, the convenience of scheduling. One guy honestly like took like 3 days per message I would send to respond, and he would really not give me a lot. Like he was really giving me so very little in his responses. It was honestly very, very frustrating. And the message I got was like, I'm way too busy for you and also not interested. So it was kind of a no for me. I do value responsiveness, and that was like a whole piece of this process, right? So I finally narrowed it down to 3 top people. 2 of them I had not heard back from. I think after asking like a follow-up question, and then 1 I had. So I was moving on to the next phase with 1, still waiting on the 2, which those 2, they did get back to me at the exact same time. One of them offered a phone consult, and 1 more was just like came back like asking questions. So I actually ended up having 2 chats with people And then one, I just responded to her questions. And then one, I actually got a phone consult with. So that was out of my top 3. I booked the phone consult like ASAP when she offered it. And I was nervous. I was really nervous. And it was great. I loved the sounds of her style and approach. I already really knew that I loved her art. Like, it's very intuitive and it was whimsical and beautiful. And like, I could feel a lot of things like looking at her artwork. So I also, after talking to her, learned like she runs her business very smoothly. She has a process and a system, and she's very professional. At the same time, she's extremely personable. And I just kind of knew where I stood with her. Like, she was very clear and direct and upfront, and I loved it. She shared a lot of her values with me, probably without even like being aware that she was doing that. And it was just kind of one of those like, okay, this is an instant yes for me. Like, it was a real no-brainer. So we discussed dates and logistics, and I was coordinating with my mom, actually, who was also getting an appointment. My mom lives in Maine, and so I was having to go all the way up to Portland, Maine. So I had to consider like how that would all work. And then once I got all the logistics squared away, made sure my mom could make it work, paid the deposit, booked it. Now, the actual artwork, this is the scary part, the actual artwork in her instance, and this is different for all of them, but it would not be revealed to me until the day of. So I did get to share with her my ideas, my Pinterest board, and like put a lot of it in writing. And I definitely made sure she heard me share my, like what I wanted, the vision, the overall vibe. But I wasn't able to actually see the image I was getting on my body forever until the day of, which I actually think is going to be a really important piece when I kind of share with you the business lessons. So anyway, that is how I like went through the process of making the decision. And maybe you're wondering here whether or not, well, like, Emily, did your mom get to weigh in? And what were her thoughts along this journey? Like, she was also getting something permanently inked on her skin. But here's the thing. My mom is actually quite a different decision maker than I am. And she puts a lot of confidence and trust in knowing that I have a really like lengthy process. So she puts a lot of confidence and trust that what I choose and what I recommend would be a great fit for both of us, which I actually was being very careful of with the people that I was looking through. I had to make sure it was a good fit for both of us and would offer us both a great experience. Now, that trust that my mom has in me, I don't take that lightly, because ultimately at the end of the day, if you think about it, like now I'm also kind of responsible for both of our experiences going smoothly. And that taught me a really valuable lesson too. I will tell you how the actual experience turned out at the end of the episode, but I do want to share with you like what I gleaned from it as a business owner and how it's really going to actually impact some of how I relate to my clients. I think so much of it is going to be helpful in you thinking about your own business and how you engage with your clients too. It was a really great opportunity to watch my brain make a decision in action and also go through a lot of what my clients are going through on a regular basis. And some of what I'm talking about in this episode ties into a very recent episode I did on Scott Olford's Hidden Levels of Consciousness. So I'll make sure I link that in the show notes because he talks about the 4 different buyer types and how they all make decisions differently, how you can speak to each of them very specifically depending on what your business is and who your clients tend to be. So like I said, that'll be in the show notes in case you didn't listen yet or in case you want to re-listen and get a refresher. But for today, onward we go into the insights. I have 6 that I pulled as highlights. But I want to say before I get into the 6, this process taught me a lot of things and the experience was really wonderful. And I think that it kind of solidified the whole meaning of the tattoo for me. So I'm sharing 6 takeaways, but like, honestly, it was a lot. It was a lot of things. Okay. So takeaway number 1, our clients, like I did, feel overwhelmed often by all of the choices out there. Now, in my case, there were a ton of different styles and shops and locations and artists. There were also different skill levels, different prices, various ways of communicating. There was a lot of different things to choose from. And in a lot of our cases, our clients feel the same. It kind of depends on your industry, of course, but we're not starved for choice, okay? In fact, we are spoiled by choice in today's modern age. So what I appreciated about who I chose, and for the record, her links are going to be in the show notes too, but if you care now, her name is Rebecca Chase. She's the owner of Brass and Briar in Portland, Maine. So your clients have a lot of choices, and different things are going to be important to different people. So the list I narrowed it down to, it was important to me that they met me where I was at in terms of communication. They also had ways that I could clearly look at their work and quality, and they shared content that actually spoke to their process and who they were as a person and their experience and how they enjoyed working most. So that was all really, really helpful for me and helped me to make a clear choice. Now, nobody that I was looking at, they didn't know I had a spreadsheet over here going. They didn't know I was looking at their Instagram for weeks prior to reaching out to them. And we don't realistically know when that's happening to us too. We may feel like we're sharing into a void or emailing into a void or posting into a void, but you just never know when you are up there on someone's top 5 for a choice. You never know when somebody is watching and paying close attention and actually enjoying and soaking up every last word of what you share, waiting on edge for you to share another post to help them make that decision. So my takeaway from that is when you are marketing your business, your services, your offers, one way you really can stay committed to helping simplify that decision-making process for people is to show what differentiates you from other people often. You can just share your strengths, your services, your values, actual behind the scenes of your work if you want. Think about ways that you can share content that helps people by giving them what they need to choose you with confidence. And remember that they're those people that are making those decisions are sometimes waiting on edge for you to share another thing that is going to be the deciding factor. So my other thought on that is in the world of so many options, really commit yourself to meeting people where they're at in terms of readiness, in terms of how they like to communicate, and also answering their questions, because that's also going to help you to stand out amongst that noise of all the different choices. Number 2, trust. Trust is really what I learned through this is for a lot of people, it is built through responsiveness and also clarity and also an excitement and willingness to do the thing, right? So what ultimately made or broke my decision, made it or break it, I don't know. What ultimately made that decision was really, at the end of the day, the top 3, they were responsive people. And they were also willing to answer my questions and rest me at ease. So they were very clear about their processes. They were very clear in answering my questions. And they were also very responsive to the things that I was reaching out to them for. So people who took a long, long time to get back to me, people who seemed really disinterested or elitist or hard to reach or elusive or vague on how it all worked, I was just you know what? I don't trust this. So the one I did choose, Rebecca, she was really clear. She was clear on how to contact her, clear on when you hear back from her, transparent about her process. She let me know all the steps I needed in making the decision. She gave me pre-care, aftercare. She was just very attentive to the ensuring that this experience was a good one. And not to mention, I knew she was very skilled and had a high level of expertise. So it was helpful to be able to build trust in her communication and also her clarity. She also was willing to move the communication right to a call, which was awesome because I was actually able to hear her speak and express some of those things that are a little bit harder to communicate maybe in just writing. And I think that's important too. People are really drawn to us when we make them feel heard, seen, and valued. And even if they're not exactly sold on us or don't know exactly what to expect, you just getting on a call with them and saying, you know what, I'm happy to answer all of your questions and communicate with you right now, not right now, but you know what I mean, with your boundaries in place is super, super helpful and can also be a big trust builder. One way I often suggest my clients do this in their website copywriting is right on their contact page. This is where you get to set yourself up to start building trust. You get to set yourself up for success by laying out the communication guidelines, like how fast will you respond? What can they expect from here? And try to answer some of those questions right off the bat whenever possible. It does help to build trust when you follow through with exactly what you say you're going to do on that page. It also helps you, I think, as a business owner, because you've kind of implemented these boundaries for yourself. And that way, if you say, you know what, I will return your email within 48 hours, you have now just given yourself that cushion, that buffer, and you don't have to feel like you're jumping to reply to something at 9:00 at night when that inquiry comes in. You say, you know what, my boundaries are that I have 48 hours to get back to that. So it's a great way to build trust. And also, I do think that responsiveness and clarity are big time trust builders, and the willingness to communicate. Takeaway number 3, even if you're amazing at what you do, sometimes you just don't connect with other people. Even if they are your ideal client, you may just not connect with them for a number of reasons, and that is totally okay. There was one person I contacted who was amazingly skilled at what he did. Now, he did take some time getting back to me, which was okay. But when we started communicating back and forth, I gotta say, I just was like, I am not connecting. I was not feeling it. I was not confident in him really understanding my vision for me and capturing it in a meaningful way. And what I have to say about that is, like, everyone's style of art and creativity and way of doing things is unique and different. And sometimes we're just not creatively a match with what we're looking for. Or if we're service providers, we're just not aligned with what somebody is looking for. And it is totally okay. Sometimes it's price. Sometimes it's timing. Sometimes it's availability, or something is just not landing. They may not like you personally, and that is really okay. It is why it's so important to just be yourself, because I really stand by there is someone for everyone, and not everybody will like you. And that is probably a good thing. So I guess what I would add to that is it also applies to us when we are actually like choosing the clients that we're going to take on. Some clients just don't land for us, and sometimes they do, and they don't land for somebody else, right? Like sometimes you send a referral to somebody and they're like, that was a no-go for me. It's not personal. It is just really important to remember that it takes two to tango, and I do believe that connecting is super, super important, and a lot of it is just out of your control. But what you can do is show them who you are, how you operate, what makes you different, and what makes you unique, because the people who do connect with you really connect with you. And I think I want to add that as the next one, like how connection itself is actually a huge trust builder. When I started all of this, I kind of went in head first, meaning I used my brain, my thinking, to get me like 90% of the way there. At the end of the day, it actually was not like my logical mind that did all the trust, like that trusted. It was all about this personal connection to the person that I chose. It was about how they made me feel, how confident I was in choosing them as a human being. And so, like, I do think that that is a huge piece of it, that connection itself is a big, big trust builder. Now, admittedly, the day of, I was really, really nervous driving there. But never once did I have reservations about the who that I chose. I simply was nervous about had not seen the art, and also that this was just something new and I had no idea how I was going to feel. All right, so don't take connection lightly. Like, it is a huge, huge builder of trust. Takeaway number 5, really think about, and this is something I need to come back to often again and again and again, but really consider where your clients are. And that will help you if you know where they're coming from and how to speak to them in that place. It will help you to stand out amidst so much noise. Despite now having one, I still do not speak the language of tattoo. Like, I do not speak ink-ese. I know nothing about tattoos. When I was first reaching out to her, or to all of these folks, it was like super awkward because I wanted to be cool and like say the right things. I didn't know the industry jargon. I didn't know the lingo. It was all way over my head. And sometimes they would ask me questions. I'm like, I don't know. I need to ask Google what this even means. I have no idea. So I think that was actually really helpful and powerful just to remember that like your customers are coming to you at all various levels of awareness. Sometimes they know all the insider lingo and the proper phraseology, but many times they do not. And that is why I think it's just really important to show up like present and compassionate and ready to answer those questions, never making somebody feel dumb or silly, never talking over their heads. Just talk to people human to human. And if something seems really obvious to you, you've been doing this much longer, right? Sometimes this is their very, very first foray into your world. So always be kind. I've had multiple people on discovery calls. I don't really call them discovery calls, whatever you want to call them. The initial get to know you chat. I've had multiple people who found me through my website or through a referral, and they know that they need my help, but they don't actually know what a copywriter is. And in some cases, they don't even know what copy is. Sometimes they think that I design websites or that I post to Instagram for them. So I have to kind of explain, no, I'm a copywriter, but I can't just say, no, I'm a copywriter. I have to explain what that actually is. I put the words on your website. I put the words on your blogs. So my reminder was in this process, say it, we can never be reminded of this enough. Say what you do, say it simply, say it simpler. Say it even simpler. And then sometimes recognize that you're still going to need to explain yourself. You're still going to need to explain pieces and parts of what you're offering. And that is totally okay and normal. Don't make anyone feel stupid as a result. Lastly, takeaway number 6. Do not take your referrals and recommendations lightly. Now, I have 2 things in here. One is from a service provider or business standpoint. When somebody sends you a referral and a vote of confidence, it is a huge compliment and act of trust. So know this, they really care about who they're referring their friend to. And they may also hear one way or the other about how that experience went for their friend. So take these referrals seriously. Treat these people like family. Treat them like gold. Exceed their expectations. Just make that your rule. I'm going to exceed everyone's expectations. The client, the person who referred them to you, and just make sure that you don't take these things lightly. It is a huge, huge gift and act of trust. Secondly, in this, if you're giving referrals to somebody else, make sure it's somebody you've checked out thoroughly and at least have an idea that it will be a good fit for their needs. It's not up to us at the end of the day how the experience goes, but we can set them up for success by backing our referrals with our word. Now, I do think, of course, like a personal experience speaks even more words. It is more powerful. But at the end of the day, you're not responsible for it, but you can set it up for success by ensuring that your referrals are backed up by your words. And as you do that, you naturally build trust in people who you give referrals to as well. The people you recommend, like people know to come to you for good recommendations. Now, I will say this, I have not always been good in this department. Sometimes I just referred people because I knew that they could do the thing. Sometimes I just referred people because they were part of a group I was in. Sometimes I worked with them and I maybe even didn't have the most wonderful experience, or I knew the behind the scenes flaws and like hiccups. And I just referred somebody to them because I don't know, I just wanted like the quick dopamine hit of connecting to people. I no longer do that. I still do sometimes make connections, of course, that don't end up panning out for whatever reason. And when that does happen, I really want to listen to like both sides of the story, take it in as information for next time so I can be aware of like the differences and what made it a wrong fit. But I no longer refer to somebody just because it's like the only person I know for the job. In my mind, I don't take referring somebody or recommending somebody lightly. I need to trust that who I'm referring someone else to will give them a high quality experience and a great result. So that is it. Those are my 6 takeaways. And we'll recap them all in a minute. But first, how it turned out. You're dying to know, aren't you? Okay, so like I said, as I was driving there, I was really nervous, but I was not nervous in who I chose. I was actually more nervous that I was not going to like what she drew, and then I was going to have to tell her, which is like a recovering people pleaser's worst nightmare. So I was a little bit I was very nervous about that. And then I was a tiny bit nervous about the pain. But one thing that was really reassuring to me was my own inner confidence in this. Like, I knew if I drove all the way there and something was off, or if I didn't love what she did design, I would be able to have my own back, basically trust my gut, say no thank you, or let's rework this. And I could trust her because I had spoken to her. I knew I could be honest and let her know if this was not going to be a good fit, and that would have been okay. And I think it's just as important to remember we are allowed to walk away from things and say when something is not a good fit, just as much as it's okay to embrace the things that are. As business owners or those looking to make a decision about our businesses, we all get to do this. It's so much better and easier, honestly, when we're just honest. And remember, it is not personal. It is honestly going to be better for everybody involved. Trust me, there is nothing worse than suffering through the consequences of a decision you knew was wrong or felt off and you went for it anyway. It's the worst. Okay. So that was my kind of nerves on the way there. And to finish my story, it went fantastic. It went great. I loved the artist. I loved Rebecca. I instantly loved what she'd created. I loved the studio. I loved where she suggested we put it. And I loved the entire experience. My mom also had a great experience. And it's something that we're both going to remember doing together for many, many years to come. And if you do want to see the tattoo and you want to hear more about my personal experience with it and the meaning and stuff, I will include my link to my Substack article that I wrote on it. But today, I really just wanted to glean the business takeaways because I thought it was such a good example of how so many people feel encountering our worlds as business owners. There is no shortage of options. It can feel like a blur, absolutely overwhelming, confusing. You don't know what you don't know. They don't know what they don't know. Some people do go ahead and do a lot of that research. But then at the end of the day, some people, it's just no, I just want to hop on a call, get to know you, and see if we have a good connection. You don't need to worry about being the loudest or the most expert or the most this or the most that. What at the end of the day, what really makes you stand out is sharing and being you, because that is what folks most resonate with, is just you. Yes, they want to know about your process and the details and your work and your style and your values. And they also want to know, are you the right fit for them as a person and for their business? So to help these kind of things along, just always remember, use simple, clear language. Don't be afraid to show your values and also your value. Be authentic, be consistent in how you show up. That's a huge piece of building trust. Don't try to be everything to everyone. Hone in on those things that make you unique, and just know that when you are letting that little light shine, you're not just shouting into a void. Somebody is watching. They are listening. They are reading. They are hanging on every word. And you never know which word is the word they needed to hear or read to make that decision. Okay, with that, I will wrap up. Next week, we're going to get into some more of the actual nuts and bolts, as they say. I'm going to answer some listener questions that came in recently, which are going to be super relevant to this time of year if you're tracking real time. And as always, if you want links to anything I mentioned in today's episode, or you want to connect with me, the human on the other side of this podcast, check out the show notes where all the links are there for you today and always. And of course, if you want a spreadsheet of tattoo artists in New Hampshire and Maine, please feel free to ask. I'm happy to share the fruits of my labor with you. I appreciate you being here, and I can't wait to chat with you again next time. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Content with Character. If you loved the episode, please make sure to subscribe to the podcast, rate, review, and share it with someone else you know it could help. For more content and visibility tips, visit my blog at emilyaborn.com, and be sure to connect with me on Instagram at emilyaborn. I'd love to hear how this inspired you to take action.